Phone rang at 7:14 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I had just poured my first cup of coffee and I was standing at the kitchen window watching a pair of cardinals fight over the bird feeder in the backyard. My wife planted that feeder the year before she passed. I still fill it every Sunday. I looked at the screen, my daughter-in-law's name, Nora. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in 11 days, not since the night my son Miles told me, very calmly, like he was reading from a grocery list, that they had gotten married 3 weeks ago. A small ceremony, he said, just close friends. He said it like he was telling me the weather, like I was a neighbor he'd forgotten to mention it to, not the man who raised him alone from the time he was 9 years old. I picked up. The mortgage payment didn't go through, Nora said. No hello. No good morning. Just that. The bank sent a notice. Miles said, you handle it automatically, so I just wanted to make sure you knew. I set my coffee down on the counter very slowly. Outside, one of the cardinals finally won and the other flew off into the oak tree. I do handle it automatically, I said. I canceled it. Silence. What? I canceled the automatic payment, Nora, 10 days ago. More silence. Then I heard her cover the phone and I heard her say something to Miles in the background. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the pitch of her voice shift, that particular frequency that means something has gone wrong. Then Miles got on the phone. Let me go back to the beginning, because you need to understand what kind of man I was before any of this. Not to excuse myself, I'm past the age of making excuses. But because none of this makes sense unless you know the soil it grew out of. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a structural engineer, built a career designing bridges and overpasses across 4 states. I'm not a flashy man. I drive a 2019 Silverado with 87,000 miles on it. I wear Carhartt jackets and New Balance shoes, and I cut my own grass. My neighbors probably think I'm a retired school teacher. What they don't know is that I own the house I live in outright, 2 rental properties in town, and a commercial unit 2 blocks from the county courthouse that I lease to an accounting firm. My late wife Donna and I built all of it together over 30 years. We didn't take vacations. We drove used cars and packed lunches and reinvested everything. When Donna got sick, pancreatic cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end, I promised her I would take care of Miles, that I would make sure he never struggled the way we had in the early years. That promise cost me more than I understood at the time. Miles is 31 now. He has a degree in communications from a state school that I paid for entirely. After graduation, he worked at a marketing agency for about 8 months, then quit because, and I'm quoting him directly here, the environment was toxic. After that came a string of things. Freelance projects that never quite materialized, a podcast that lasted 6 episodes, a dropshipping business that he shut down after 3 months when it didn't immediately make money. For 4 years, I covered his rent on an apartment in the city, $1,200 a month. I also covered his car insurance, his health insurance through a plan I kept him on, and a monthly transfer of $800 that he called a loan, and I called privately a gift I was too afraid to stop giving. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he just needed time to find his footing. I told myself Donna would have wanted this. I don't know if any of that was true. What I know is that I enabled a man to become 30 years old without ever once paying his own electric bill. And then he met Nora. I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to make Nora the villain of this story, and the truth is more complicated than that. She is a sharp woman, ambitious. She grew up with money. Her father is a semi-retired periodontist outside of Scottsdale who still drives a new Lexus every 2 years and takes his family to Cabo every January. Nora had opinions about things, about restaurants and neighborhoods and the right brand of everything. None of that is a crime. But here's what I noticed in the 2.5 years Miles and Nora were together before they secretly married. My son changed the way he talked to me. It happened slowly, so slowly I almost missed it. A certain edge crept into his voice when I called. He started canceling our Sunday dinners. We'd had Sunday dinners together almost every week since Donna died. Just the 2 of us. Burgers or pasta, or sometimes I'd drive to the city and we'd go to this barbecue place he loved near his apartment. Those dinners were the thing I looked forward to most all week. They stopped. He was always busy. They had plans. Then came their requests. They wanted to move to a bigger apartment. The current one felt small for 2 people. Could I help with first and last month? The new place was $1,800 a month. I covered it. Then Nora's car needed work. A transmission issue, the estimate was $2,300. Her father had already offered, Miles told me, but he didn't want to take it from him. He wanted to handle it himself. Could I float him until a freelance contract came through? I said yes. Then they wanted to go to a wedding in Charleston. Nora's college friend was getting married, and flights in the hotel and a gift and new clothes for the event were going to run close to $3,000. They didn't want to put it on credit cards. Could I help just this once? Just this once. I had stopped counting how many times I had heard those words. I am not a man who cries easily. I cried 3 times in my adult life that I can remember. When Donna was diagnosed, when she died, and once years before that when Miles, who was 11, had a bad accident on his bike and I sat in the emergency room waiting area for 4 hours not knowing if he was going to be okay. He was. Broken collarbone and a concussion. He was fine. I want you to understand that I am not a soft man. I am not a man who doesn't know the value of a dollar, but there is a particular kind of blindness that comes from grief and from guilt and from being the only parent a kid has left. I kept paying because stopping felt like abandonment, like I would be failing Donna's memory. I know how that sounds. I'm not proud of it. I found out about the wedding from my brother-in-law, Donna's younger brother, a man named Chester who lives about 40 minutes from me, and who I have dinner with every few months. Chester has 2 grown daughters who both work, both pay their own bills, both call him on his birthday without being reminded. I don't say this to be unkind about Miles. I say it because Chester is a man with perspective. Chester texted me on a Tuesday afternoon. Just a screenshot. No message, just the image. It was an Instagram post. Miles's account, which I didn't follow, he'd never suggested it and I hadn't pushed. A photo of Miles and Nora dressed up, her in a white dress, him in a suit I'd never seen. They were at what looked like a rooftop venue. Flowers everywhere, string lights, at least 40 or 50 people visible in the background. The caption said, "Married my best friend. Best day of my life." It was dated 3 weeks earlier. I sat with that for a long time. I sat in my truck in the parking lot of a hardware store where I'd been going to pick up weather stripping, and I just sat there and I looked at the picture. My son's face. Donna's eyes. He got her eyes. That particular gray-green that I always thought was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He was laughing in the photo, genuinely laughing, and Nora had her head back and was laughing too, and the whole thing looked like the happiest moment of someone's life. I was not in that picture. I was not in any picture, because I was not in any picture, because I was not there. I drove home. I didn't get the weather stripping. I made myself dinner. Something simple. Eggs and toast, and I ate it standing over the sink, the way I do when I don't feel like sitting at the table alone. And then I went into Donna's old sewing room, which I've kept exactly as she left it, and I sat in the chair by the window, and I had a conversation with her. I do that sometimes. I don't think she can hear me. I do it anyway. I told her what I'd seen. I told her I didn't know what to do. I told her I was tired, and then I called Miles. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was easy, casual, like a man who doesn't know he's been caught yet, or like a man who doesn't think he's done anything to be caught for. I still don't know which one it was. I asked him how things were going. He said fine, busy, they'd been doing a lot of stuff lately. I asked him if there was anything new he wanted to tell me. Brief pause. Then he said, "Yeah, actually, he and Nora had gotten married a few weeks back. Small ceremony," he said. "Just close friends, very low-key." I asked him why I wasn't there. He paused again. Then he said it in his careful, measured way, the way you talk to someone when you've rehearsed the answer, that they'd wanted to keep it intimate, just their core circle. And he said gently, like he was doing me a favor by being honest, that Nora's friends were a little more formal and they didn't want to have to manage, and he trailed off before finishing the sentence. But I understood the end of it. They didn't want to manage me. My flannel shirts. My truck. My Carhartt jacket at a rooftop venue with string lights. I did not raise my voice. I asked him one more question. I asked if Nora's parents were there. "Yes," he said. "They were." I said goodnight. I didn't sleep much. I lay there in the dark and I thought about the 11 days ahead of me before the 1st of the month, when the automatic mortgage payment on their apartment was set to process. I thought about the monthly transfer. I thought about the insurance payments routing quietly through my account like water through a pipe, steady and invisible and taken entirely for granted. I thought about Donna, about what she would have wanted. And here is the thing about Donna that people didn't always understand. She was kind, the most genuinely kind person I have ever known. but she was not a pushover. She had a line. I watched her draw it with her own mother when we were in our 30s. A difficult woman who took and took until Donna sat down with her one afternoon and said very quietly, "This is the last time I'm asking you to treat me with respect." And she meant it. Her mother got in line. I thought about what Donna would have said to me if she had been sitting in that chair instead of me talking to an empty room. I think she would have said, "You've been using our money to buy his love for 4 years. How's that working out?" In the morning, I called my accountant, who has been handling my finances for 12 years. I told him to cancel the automatic mortgage payment effective immediately. I told him to stop the monthly transfers to Miles's account. I called my insurance agent and had Miles removed from my health plan. He was 31. He was past the coverage age anyway. I'd been carrying him through a workaround that my agent had kindly arranged years ago. That ended. I didn't call Miles. I didn't send a text. I didn't explain anything. I went back to filling the bird feeder and drinking my coffee and going about my life. 8 days later, Nora called me at 7:14 in the morning to tell me the mortgage hadn't gone through. When Miles got on the phone, his voice had changed. The casualness was gone. "Dad, what's going on?" "I canceled the payment," I said. "I canceled all of them." "What does that mean, all of them?" "The mortgage, the monthly transfer, the insurance, all of it. Done." Silence. I heard Nora in the background, her voice tight, asking him what I was saying. "Dad." His voice shifted into something I hadn't heard in a long time. Not anger, something more complicated than that. "You can't just, we have a lease. The rent is due in 4 days." "I know when the rent is due," I said. "I've been paying it for 3 years. So what are we supposed to do?" "That," I said, "is a great question. I'd start by calling Nora's parents." I heard him pull a breath. "This isn't fair." "Miles." I kept my voice even. I had been rehearsing this, not the words exactly, but the steadiness of it. "I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer me honestly. Do you think it was fair when you didn't invite me to your wedding?" Long pause. That's a different thing." "Okay," I said. "It's a different thing. I'll let you two figure out the rent." And I hung up. I want to tell you what happened over the next 2 weeks because it was, in a way, more revealing than anything that came before it. Miles called back 4 times that first day. I answered the second call. He had shifted tactics. Less defensive now, more conciliatory. He said he understood I was hurt. He said the wedding decision was complicated and that Nora had strong feelings about the size of the event, and he had been caught in the middle. He said he should have handled it differently. He was sorry. I told him I appreciated that. I told him I meant it when I said I appreciated it. Then I told him that sorry didn't change the situation, that I had been financially supporting 2 able-bodied adults for years and that this was going to stop, not as punishment, but because it was simply time. He was 31 years old. I was 63. I had things I wanted to do with the years I had left, and subsidizing his rent was not on the list. He asked me what he was supposed to do about the apartment. I told him he had options. He could talk to his landlord about a payment extension. He could ask Nora's parents. He could get a job. There were several job listing sites I had heard were quite good. I offered no further guidance. He hung up. 3 days later, I got a call from Nora's father. I'd met the man twice. Once at a birthday dinner Miles had organized, once at a Christmas party at their apartment that Nora had hosted. He was perfectly pleasant both times. Retired to semi-retired. A big house in Scottsdale, Lexus in the garage, golf on Thursdays. He introduced himself unnecessarily. I have his name in my phone, and then he explained in a very reasonable tone that he understood there was some kind of situation with the apartment. He said he wanted to understand what was going on because Miles and Nora had reached out to him for help. I told him exactly what had happened. Not the emotional version. The financial version. Numbers, dates, amounts. I told him what I had been paying, for how long, and that I had stopped. Silence on his end. He paused. "That's quite a lot." "Yes," I said. "It is." Another pause. "They never told me any of that." "No," I said. "I didn't imagine they had." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. He said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have known." That was all. We said goodbye and I hung up and I stood in my kitchen and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not satisfaction exactly. Something quieter than that. Something closer to solid ground. They found a solution. I don't know exactly what it was. Whether Nora's father stepped in, whether they negotiated with the landlord, whether they found a cheaper place. Miles texted me about 3 weeks after the phone call. Not to ask for money, just to say that they had figured things out and that he'd been doing some thinking and that he'd gotten a job, a real one. Project coordinator at a construction management firm, decent salary, benefits. He said it wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I read that text 3 times. Then I called Chester and we went to that barbecue place I used to go to at Miles, the one near the old apartment. And I had a pulled pork sandwich, and Chester had the brisket, and we talked for 2 hours about nothing in particular and everything that mattered. Chester raised his glass of sweet tea at one point and said, "Donna would be proud of you." I told him I wasn't sure about that. He said, "I am. Miles and I have dinner occasionally now. Not every Sunday, that's not where we are yet. But sometimes, that's not where we are yet. But sometimes, last month he drove out to my place on a Saturday and helped me replace the gutters on the garage, something I'd been putting off. We worked most of the morning without talking much, the way men do when they're comfortable. Around noon, I made sandwiches and we sat on the tailgate of the Silverado and ate them. He said at one point while he was looking out at the yard, "I know I messed up with the wedding. I should have told them no." I didn't say anything for a minute. Then I said, "What matters is what you do from here." He nodded. He didn't look at me when he said it, but he said it anyway. "I'm trying." I believe him. I don't know if belief is the same as trust yet, but it's a start. The bird feeder is still out there. I filled it this past Sunday, same as always. The cardinals came back. I think it's the same pair, though I know I can't really know that. One of them sat on the edge of the feeder for a long time without eating. Just sat there. Then the other one landed and they fed side by side for a while, and then they were both gone. I stood at the window with my coffee and thought about Donna. I thought about the 30 years we spent building something. I thought about the promise I made her and whether I had kept it, and what keeping a promise really means when the world turns out different than you imagined it would. I don't have a clean answer for that. What I have is a paid-off house, a son who is learning to stand on his own 2 feet, a brother-in-law who answers when I call, a truck with 87,000 miles on it, and a bird feeder I fill every Sunday. For a man my age, that is not nothing. That is, in fact, quite a lot. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. Not just the wedding, not just the phone call at 7:14 in the morning, but all of it, the years before. The pattern I built without realizing I was building it. The way a man can look at a situation clearly for years and still refuse to see it, because seeing it means he has to change something. Here's what I came to understand. What happened with Miles wasn't really about Nora. It wasn't even about the wedding. It was about what I had trained him to expect from me, and what I had trained myself to accept in return. Every time I said yes when I should have said not yet, every time I wired money to solve a problem he was capable of solving himself, I was sending him a message. I just never thought about what that message actually said. It said, "You don't have to figure this out. I'll be here." It said, "Your discomfort is my emergency." And when you tell a person that long enough, they start to believe it. And when they believe it long enough, they stop even thinking to say thank you. It just becomes weather. It just becomes the way things are. That's not love. I thought it was. I thought I was honoring Donna by keeping Miles cushioned from difficulty. But Donna was not a woman who believed in cushioning people from difficulty. She believed in sitting with people while they faced it. There's a difference. I confused the two for years, and my son paid for that confusion in ways neither of us could fully see until it was already done. What pulled me back wasn't anger. I want to be clear about that. When I sat in that hardware store parking lot looking at the Instagram photo, I wasn't furious. I was just finally honest with myself about what the money had been doing, about what I had been avoiding, about the fact that a 63-year-old man with rental properties and a paid-off house had spent 4 years afraid to tell his adult son no because he didn't want to feel like a bad father, as if the money was the proof that I wasn't. The hardest thing I ever did was not cut the payments. The hardest thing was accepting that I should have done it years earlier, and that my reluctance had cost Miles something real. Time, resilience, the particular kind of confidence that only comes from solving your own problems. I gave him comfort and accidentally took those things from him. That's a hard accounting. I carry it. But here's what I also believe. It's never too late to stop. Miles got a job. He's figuring it out. He drove 40 minutes on a Saturday to help me replace gutters he didn't have to touch. That morning on the tailgate, eating sandwiches, in the quiet, that felt more like a real relationship than anything we'd had in years, because it wasn't built on what I was giving him. It was built on who we actually were to each other. Integrity is what you do when no one's making you do it. Wisdom is finally understanding why it matters. And grit, real grit, is what Miles is learning now. At 31, later than he should have. But not too late. I think he's going to be okay. I think we both are. The bird feeder still needs filling every Sunday. Some things don't change, but some things do, and they should.